let's start with talking about the trade deadline. The big news was Juan Soto going to the Padres. Do you think the Juan Soto trade will actually be enough? Because I think right now the Padres are still back in the NL West. And I know the Dodgers are really good, but it seems like the Padres won't be able to catch them. Do you think even with the addition of Juan Soto, do you think the Padres will finally be able to catch up with the Dodgers?
I don't know because the Dodgers pretty much have been taking care of them this weekend. They lost on Friday to the Dodgers, 8-1. Then they lost Saturday 8-3. Now they're losing 2-0. And this not we're talking about a team that just got Juan Soto. They got Josh Bell. They got Brandon Drury. Fernando Tatis is coming back. Maybe let's wait until Fernando Tatis is back to see if anything changes. It might be too late for the division, but they'll definitely be in the playoffs and they can wreak havoc there. I mean, they pretty much ran roughshod over the Mets during their 2 series that they played in San Diego and here in New York. So as much as they added to the offense, it's going to be the pitching that what gets you through. The Dodgers have the pitching, Mets have pitching. Braves, even though they, struggled, they got pitching too. So if the Padres pitching is as good, they'll definitely make a deep run into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because I think still, even with the addition of Juan Soto and Josh Bell, I think a lot of Dodgers fans still think that the Padres are the little brothers, right? And I think I heard there was recently one of the Dodgers, it was a local newscast, I think, and basically said that they beat their little brother. So I feel like, the Dodgers still quite, because they pretty much dominated the division since 2015 or 2016. I mean, the Giants, I know, were dominated for a while, but now it's kind of been the Dodgers. So even with the addition of Juan Soto and Josh Bell, I feel like still like the Padres are still not quite there. They do have a good pitcher in Joe Musgrove, but Blake Snell and Yu Darvish haven't quite produced what they did when they acquired him a few years ago. So yeah, it would be interesting. I can't wait to watch because the NL postseason I feel like is going to be pretty interesting because right now it seems like there's still a bunch of teams in there. So we'll see what happens. All right. So some other things that happened in the trade deadline. Now, Juan Soto was the big one, right? But was there another trade that I'm not mentioning right now that you really think is going to be huge in the playoffs?
Well, the Yankees made the move for Montas, which I think they desperately needed a starting pitcher. They lost out on Luis Castillo, and you know what? Luis Castillo may help propel the Mariners to the postseason. So, we'll see with that. But Houston made a couple of big moves. Trey Mancini, Christian Vasquez, those are 2 huge moves to help solidify that offense. I mean, I saw Houston come in and sweep us 4 games just with the offense that they had already had. They're going to be a tough out. I mean, I think the AL postseason, if I had to go today, you're going to see the Yankees and the Astros in the ALCS. Now, I know the Yankees have struggled. They got swept by the Cardinals this weekend. Tough for, the Yankees, but a good way to propel the Cardinals into, a playoff spot at some point. But I don't see the Yankees, and especially being from this area, I'll see the Yankees lose I'll believe it when I see it with them. They this is their tough stretch right now, but they built such a lead in the division that I don't see them, either getting knocked out early or just not making it at all. There's always been this collision course between the Astros and the Yankees at some point to get to the ALCS. And I think we'll get to there.
Yeah, another trade too that was interesting that a lot of people were talking about over the weekend was the St. Louis Cardinals trading Harrison Bader, probably the fastest guy in baseball, getting Jordan Montgomery, and he goes out and pitches really great on Saturday. They win 1-0. Do you think Montgomery, he probably definitely wanted revenge because he probably didn't want to be traded.
Absolutely.
But what do you think about Jordan Montgomery, and do you think he can be a solid starting pitcher for the Cardinals team that pretty much needs pitching?
I mean, he pitched okay when I saw him the one time for that. It was actually his last start was against the Mets for the Yankees. And, he pitched okay. They took him out early and he was very upset about that. I mean, especially if you guys need pitching, right? If the Cardinals need pitching, I think that having Jordan Montgomery as the lefty works. The Yankees pretty much got rid of him because they said they didn't think he was going to pitch in the postseason, which is surprising to me because they, lost Luis Severino and now he's on the IL. I don't know what the purpose of that move was. It was very last second. It was like one of those at the end of the buzzer type moves between the Yankees and Cardinals. So I don't know why they made that move. And I think a lot of fans seem to be, from listening to, sports radio up here, a lot of fans seem to be confused about the move. Harrison Bader, I mean, he always, crushed the Mets. He was always a pest. So that may work out for the Yankees outfield, who, they don't really like Aaron Hicks out there. They just got rid of Joey Gallo. They traded for Benintendi, and then you'll have also Aaron Judge out there. So that move may actually work its way for both teams. It's really hard, to play in New York, and, Montgomery, I thought was a decent enough pitcher, but they didn't see him pitching in the postseason. So I think that's why they traded him.
Mm-hmm. And Harrison Bader, I mean, he's not the best hitter, but he's a great in the outfield, and especially with him being one of the, if not the fastest guy in baseball. However, I think he does have an injury currently, and I think that might be why the Cardinals were a little afraid to keep him. But another team, or another, of course, we talked about Juan Soto. Do you think there'll be, I know the Cardinals and the Mets were involved in the trade as well, and I think the Dodgers were involved as well. But do you think there's one team that's going to be going to regret not being able to acquire Juan Soto?
I mean, the Mets had no, say in that, because the Nationals were not going to trade him to New York. They didn't want him to stay in the division, so he was going to go out west. The only team that really affects is the Dodgers. It doesn't really. I mean, if the Cardinals wanted offense, I don't know if what they were looking for. They just was going out for pitching, but the Cardinals won't really see him as much unless they make it to the postseason. And the same with the Mets. It would only be, 3 or, 2 games, depending on what the series is. But I think what's important is that one of these teams that are in the top, the other teams like the Dodgers, Mets, and Cardinals, try to avoid having to play them in a short series. I think that's what's important. And whichever team plays them, they got to get home field, because in this round of the playoffs, that first round, that wild card round, the team that leads is going to have all 3 games at their ballpark. So you're going to want that. I mean, I don't want to face them in a 3-game set. I'd rather wait until they get to the division series and we get a 5-game set. So I don't know how much the Soto effect will come into play. We'll find out once we get to the postseason. But if the Dodgers are manhandling them like they're doing right now, I mean, it might not even make a difference. This might come later on, maybe next season. They're going to need time to mesh and come together as a team. There's a whole lot of moving parts that happen, and a whole lot of new people that came in. They also got Josh Hader from Milwaukee, so those might be big moves as well. I don't even think that San Diego really needed to make that move. If they would have got just Josh Bell and Drury and also Hader, I think that would have been good enough to help them get through. I mean, obviously Soto is a superstar, but I don't know. I don't know how well this is going to work out for them. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but anything can happen in the postseason.
Do you think Mike Trout or Ohtani gets traded this offseason?
I do. Not Trout, but I think Ohtani. And I think that, not to be biased, but I think there may be a possibility that it would be to the Mets because of the whole Billy Epler was the one who signed him. I think the Mets, if you saw at the trade deadline, they didn't really make any big moves. They brought in Tyler Naquin. They brought in Daniel Vogelback. On the trade deadline day, they brought in Darren Ruff. And they brought in Michael Givens, all these component pieces, because they didn't want to trade any of their prospects for any rentals. And they ended up saving all their prospects. And I think it was the Friday before the trade deadline, they spoke with Anaheim to kind of gauge to see where they were at. And I think that they were saving those prospects for a trade in the offseason for Ohtani because, they came out real quick and said, hey, we're not trading, Mark Vientos. We're not trading Ronnie Mauricio right now. We're not trading any of our top guys. I think Epler came out and said he wasn't trading any of his top 19 prospects. If you're not doing that, you're not going to get any big guys. And if they were to do that, it probably would have been for Soto. But, Soto was not coming here because of the whole in division thing.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and much more. Also, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Sports Town Podcast. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the right.